Fear and anger can be healthy. They can get us to do the right things, but stress is one of the biggest problems that we face. The economy affects so many things. A lot of people think it's just about money and the rich getting richer, but without that economic stability, it starts to really tear you down inside, mentally. I look at the people of London as the infrastructure of London. It's a 91% service economy here in London, and maybe even in the city you live in, which means the people are only as healthy as their minds, and the people are the infrastructure of the city. I just don't see the politicians talking about this. I don't see them offering solutions. The economy is the backbone of what goes on in society. London wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the economy. That's why people came together originally to trade. We hate sitting at home. It makes us sad. It makes us depressed. We love being connected. We love doing things for other people. We love being of service. And that's what we all need to be as humans. So let's give us the chance to do that. Let's give people the tools. Let's give them the break in the business rates. Let's remove all the regulation and red tape. And let's really get out there and get London back to work. And let's also make London great again.
One, two, three. Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the Happy Pair. Welcome to Real Deal. Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real Studios to talk about something that's really important. And today, I really want to talk about how the economic recession is causing mental health issues here in London and actually all around the world. And this is something I want to talk very seriously about today because I want to try to find solutions. And I really welcome your input and help. We know that this has been an issue through the lockdown, the pandemic, and the recession. But when I've been out there in the field, I've really found out how serious this issue is. And as I've gone into the data, which I want to share with you today, it's even more serious than I thought it was. And it's quite shocking, some of the numbers out there going right now with people that are considering suicide, people that are feeling anxious, feeling lonely, feeling stressed, and how it's really hurting our physical and mental well-being. So I want to talk about that today. But first, I want to hear from you. So there's all sorts of different platforms that people are watching this show on, but I want you to type into the chat right now and tell me, what is the single biggest economic challenge you are facing right now? Also, I want you to answer a question. Since the pandemic, have you felt a significant increase in stress levels, anxiety, loneliness, or hopelessness? And finally, how do you think we can solve these problems? Is it leadership that we need? What are the real issues? So please type in the chat right now. I'd really love to hear from you so we can try to find these problems and solve them together. You know, I'm going to talk about London because I can only control what's in front of me. But I want you to tell me what's happening in your city because I want the best ideas to surface so we can all use them. That's been the theme of London Real for the past 9 years. People say, Brian, why do you have this person on or this person on? Why do you agree with this person? It's not about me agreeing with people. It's a marketplace of ideas that we create here at London Real so we can choose the best idea. Best ideas always float to the top if we can have an open and honest debate, and the best ideas have marked the upward surge of human civilization throughout history. So let's get these ideas out there and choose the best ones so we can move forward. And look, this is the second part of a series that I'm doing on how I can help make London great again, to get out there and find out what can we really do on the ground. And I'm literally going out and speaking to people in the field. I had 2 incredible conversations yesterday with entrepreneurs and business leaders here in London, and I want to share with you those conversations. I've got some video coming shortly, and I'm going to be having more conversations with community leaders, health professionals, our first responders, anybody I can talk to, people in the culture and in the arts, in tourism, anyone I can talk to offer solutions to the problem that's not only happening here in London, but it's happening around the world. And unfortunately, I think our leadership is failing us. I think we get duplicitous responses from our government, and sometimes it seems to be politics, and they're not really concentrating on good policy that's going to help us get to the next level. So that's what I want to talk about today. You know, before I get started, a lot of people say, Brian, what's with the funny accent? What's an American doing in London, and why do you love this city? Well, I love London. What can I say? I was actually training in the gym yesterday. It was leg day. And one of the trainers came up to me and said, "Hey, where are you from? I heard you talking and you sound a little different." And I said, "Well, I'm from San Diego, California." He says, "What are you doing in London?" I said, "This is the greatest city in the world." He said, "What are you talking about? You're from the beach, the sun, the surf, Baywatch." And I said, "No, this is the greatest city in the world." I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "London." And I was trying to convince him how this is such a great place. And I've lived here over 20 years. And for me, this city resonated with me. I love the history. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the fighting spirit. You know, the people that fought back in the Blitz of 1940 when everything looked hopeless. Everything looked lost. It looked like only a matter of time before Germany would invade and crush this entire great civilization, and yet the people fought back. I love everything about this city, and that's why I named my show after this city. That was a conscious effort. London Real was because of this great city. My children were born in this city. I have citizenship in this country, and it's something that's I've always loved coming home to, and this is home. People say, "How often do you go back to the States?" Rarely, actually. This is the place I call home. And so it pains me and frustrates me when I go out there and I see boarded up businesses, when I hear people suffering from their mental health, when I watch political leaders make ridiculous decisions, when there's no science-based decision-making when it comes to how to deal with COVID in our lives, our businesses, even our education. I'm taking my children to school. Every single day I walk my son Caden to school, and I'm watching what happens. I'm seeing the people out there, and it pains me to see this city struggling economically more than any other city in Europe. It really is. And so I want to offer solutions. That's the thing. Don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution. That's what I tell my team here all the time. And so today I want to bring you some ideas for some solutions. I'm not one that complains. I'm one that wants to offer a better concept. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about, of course, why I love London as well. And I want to move to, my next slide. And that is me going out and talking to real people out there on the ground. And so the first person that I went and spoke to was Simon Woodruff. And this is Simon. And funny enough, he invited me to speak with him yesterday. And of course, he just happens to live on a houseboat in Chelsea on the Thames River here in London. So I know it's a hard job I had, but I got to go out and speak with this man. He's an incredible guy. He received an OBE from the Queen in 2006 for services to the country. And Simon, for 30 years, was in the entertainment business. Then he created a restaurant chain called Yo Sushi, where at the time, no one had ever seen anything like that in London. He put sushi on conveyor belts that went around the restaurant. You could take what you want. Robots would serve you drinks. And it was really out there. It required a lot of innovation, a lot of risk-taking, a lot of real British spirit. And he made a massive success out of that. He later went on to become one of the first dragons on Dragon's Den and quiz entrepreneurs and push them hard about their business models. And I got to sit down with him yesterday, and I asked him quite frankly, I said, "Simon, what do you see of the problems we face here, and what are some of the solutions to get London back to work?" Because I really feel that the economy solves so many problems. It gets people back on track, it gets them busy, it gets them generating an income, it provides certainty. And so I went out and asked him some really hard questions, and I want to share with you some of the responses that he gave to me. So here's a short video clip of me going out and speaking with Simon Woodruff yesterday. So it's Brian Rose from London Real. I am on this beautiful houseboat in Chelsea Harbor with Simon Woodruff, who is an entrepreneur who's pretty much been there and done that. 30 years in the entertainment business. He also was the founder of Yo Sushi, an iconic British brand, one of the first dragons on Dragon's Den, and now he's taken that Yo brand into hospitality all around the world. And I'm super excited to sit down with him today and maybe answer some questions that have been burning inside me lately, which is, how do we get London back to work? Tell me about fear. This country has seen moments of real darkness and come together, the Blitz in 1940, for example. And I remember when this started happening in March, I had a young team and I said, look, I've seen things like this before. I've seen economic crashes. I remember the AIDS scare when I was in New York City, and I said, you know, you're going to feel all this fear, but if you breathe through it, it's never going to be as bad as you think it is. But a lot of people have processed fear really maybe poorly or in a difficult way with all this COVID. How would you give advice to how to deal with the fear and the unknown? Because it's not dissimilar to business.
Well, I mean, look, here we are sitting in a serious business conversation and we're talking about fear. I mean, the world has changed, and absolutely right. I mean, fear is one of the most common human emotions that we all suffer all of the time. And actually, it's very useful. A bit like anger can be very useful as well. It gets you up and gets you off your bum and gets you doing things. Yeah. Stress is not so good. Because it sort of debilitates you and stops you doing things. So, you know, there's a balance, but I think, you know, we're going through a period where we're learning, and I think it'll be taught in schools eventually, how to deal with these emotions that we get as human beings, as opposed to just learning about history and geography and math, you know, and we will get much better and more rounded human beings ready to and work together. But I think, you know, I've seen during this whole pandemic crisis, a bit of a wartime spirit, a sense of us being in it together. And I hope that will, as I'd say, go through to government so that we'll get better politicians in time.
And I really enjoyed my time with Simon. You can see he really is quite a character. And we're going to be publishing the entire conversation, of course, on our website and on YouTube as well. But what really stood out for me is what Simon said. He said, fear and anger can be healthy. They can get us to do the right things, but stress is one of the biggest problems that we face. And he's seen a lot of that in the community, a lot of that with entrepreneurs, a lot of that with people being laid off and people with furlough and people not knowing their economic future. And it was really interesting to hear that point of view from him and how he thought that stress factor was one of the worst things that can happen and one of the most damaging pieces when it comes to what's happening in this lockdown and when it comes to any kind of economic downturn. So it got me thinking. And, you know, my next meeting in the day was with Peter Smith. And so I moved on now to a man who's really on the ground in retail, who runs a coffee chain called Caffeine with a K. And he's been doing business for 11 years. And I sat down with Peter Smith and I wanted to, again, listen, like, what are some of the issues you're facing? And one of the things that Peter did early on was he lobbied the council to put outdoor seating so he could keep his business going. He was barely hanging on by a thread, but he found that the government wasn't responding, and it wasn't until he went on Instagram and he even had to walk down the street and beg the BBC to do a feature about him. You know you're desperate when you ask the BBC for help. And then finally, the council came and actually helped him. But it was only because he made up a big mess and a big stink. And every person that sits outside means that one of his employees might be able to get paid, which keeps them in the game, which keeps the local economy going. And so I listened to Peter about all the issues that were on his mind. And I want to play for you the time that I spent with him and some of the issues that he brought up about struggling as a business, trying to get London back to work, and trying to deal with a lot of the red tape and the stresses and the problems that he had as an entrepreneur. So I want to play this short video for you of the second entrepreneur I went out in the field and saw. This is Peter Smith, and this is someone who's encountering many of the problems we're seeing out there with small businesses around the world. And these are some of his thoughts and some of his frustrations. Hey, it's Brian Rose from London Real. I am here with Peter Smith at Caffeine, his establishment, one of two coffee bars that you own. Yeah. This man was in the hospitality industry for over 30 years, originally from Melbourne, Australia.
Correct.
And been really impressed with how you've got your business back and running since June. You put in outdoor seating, and you're trying to find ways to do business in this new COVID reality. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the challenges you face as an entrepreneur, and how you've been able to get back to business. How hard are things right now, and are you optimistic for the future? So a bunch of questions.
Okay, great question. Yeah, I'm optimistic for the future because I'm an optimistic person. And I think you have to be optimistic, and you have to push forward for the positive views on life and think that and believe that things are going to get better.
I've been told 13% of office workers have returned to London. I mean, that's hard to crack that if you're in retail.
Yeah.
But you're saying a lot of it's mentality about being optimistic and looking for solutions.
Yeah, you have to be optimistic and look for solutions and look for ways that you can progress forward. It may not be the best way forward for that time being, and there is going to be some losses in the meantime as well. We are operating now at 60% of our normal trade in this store. In our other store, it's been open for 3 weeks, but we're operating at 40% of our normal trade. So with that sort of trade levels, there are people, and when I say people, the people who work for you, who are potentially going to be suffering in the long run. And that's the real sad part of it. That's the real hard part of it. And I don't know what to do about that.
Right.
You know, the government support that we've had, the furlough scheme, the grants, all those things, I can't personally complain about that. I think it's been quite good. But it is, as you know, it is running out and it's running low. And it's a fine balance of trying to find how long we keep that support for and how long you let them, people start walking basically and keep going.
Let's get London back to work. This city's incredible. The culture's incredible. I think we could lead the world if we just got better leadership, some science-based policies, and got everyone back here. I think we really could be a beacon, you know, and there's some places that are much worse than us. Don't get me wrong, but I think we could be leading the world and showing them how a metropolis like this can get back, bring the culture back, bring the optimism back, do it safely. Or we can just bump along and be an also-ran, and we're going to suffer, and it's going to take years to rebuild. You know,
we don't want that.
We don't want that.
I didn't come to London from Melbourne for that. I came to London to be part of a successful city and to be successful myself, and that's what I want.
There it is, the London dream.
Exactly.
All right, look, I really appreciate you, Peter. And again, I know you've been working really hard. I can see it in your eyes as a fellow entrepreneur. I know that. Look, it's hard out there, and look, we've been in the same situation since March, just trying to find ways to innovate and still provide value to our customers. And that's what we've been continuing to broadcast. So I appreciate you with what you do.
Welcome.
And look, let's get London back to work. Let's, make London great again is what I want to say. And this is it. Caffeine, great place. I've heard about you the last few years as well. So I do know about you and your brand. And let's support these businesses. Let's say yes when they ask for retail space. Let's say yes when they ask for lower business rates. Let's say yes when they ask for less restriction, less red tape. And let's rebuild the city. So thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you so much, sir. You know, it's really interesting when you go out and speak to people in the field. It's different than reading a report about data or hearing about a survey or hearing some person in the government tell you what the situation is. I mean, if you can see the pain in Peter's eyes when he's looking at a business that's 11 years old, he looked at the original business plan and he can see it literally disintegrating in front of his eyes. But even more than that, he's talking about how he can lead employees on a regular basis to go out on the front lines and deal in strange situations and uncertainty. And one of the themes that he really kept hitting me with was the mental health issues that he faces as an entrepreneur, that his employees are facing, and that everyone in this city is facing because of the economic uncertainty. And it just really showed me that this is something we need to look deeper, because the economy affects so many things. A lot of people think it's just about money and the rich getting richer, but without that economic stability, it starts to really tear you down inside mentally, and that can also turn into physical issues as well. And so I started thinking about this and thought I would try to go in a little bit deeper and find out what are some of the facts during this time of the lockdown and the pandemic, what's actually happening with our mental health. So I thought, what can I do to find out what the numbers are? Because we've been talking about this on London Real for quite a while. I've had Joe Dispenza on, or Dr. Zach Bush, even people like Greg Braden that are saying, we don't understand the mental health aspects. We don't understand how stress is going to play into everything that's happening right now. And so I decided to dig into the numbers And this is what I did. And some of these numbers are really going to blow your mind, not necessarily in a good way. And so these are some of the really important numbers that I looked at here. And this comes from the Mental Health Foundation from July of this year. This is literally 2 months ago, and the Mental Health Foundation is giving you these numbers, and I want to share with you these because they're very serious, and I would argue they might be similar to your city. And I would encourage you to look at these numbers. They're oftentimes published by the government on a mandatory basis. So these are some of the things we discovered. 49% of the population in the UK has felt anxious or worried in the previous 2 weeks. And again, if you can type in wherever you're watching this and tell me, does this include you? Have you felt anxious at any time in the past 2 weeks? 49%, very, very high. More than 1 in 5 people have felt lonely during this lockdown. Again, tell me if that's you. 1 in 6 people have felt hopeless. You know, that's a strong word, feeling hopeless. 1 in 8 people have felt panicked in the previous 2 weeks. And again, please type in and tell me, is that you? Have you felt any feelings of panic? But now is where I even get more scared. Because if you look into the numbers further, 29% of unemployed people have reported suicidal thoughts. And Feely's raising concerns due to the likely increase of unemployment due to the recession. 21% of unemployed people reported suicidal thoughts. 1 in 5 people. I mean, that's a scary number. And it gets even worse. Young people were significantly more likely to report the suicidal thoughts. That's age 18 to 24, 20% more likely, 19%, and 15% more likely in those age groups. So really scary numbers as far as the quantification of how bad the economic downturn has affected our mental health. But there was one number that really stood out for me. And we continued down this route of looking at some of these other figures, and that was this. During July of this year, 10% of the people across the UK have experienced suicidal thoughts. Now, that's already bad enough. That's something we really need to think about with what's going on with the country and how we can really work on our mental health. And this is something we've been talking about on London Real for years, and I'll talk about that shortly. But the number that really struck out is that it's twice as high for those people that are unemployed. So double, 100% increase in suicidal thoughts if you are unemployed right now. And it really shows how this economic crisis is turning into a mental health crisis. And it shows you how there's permanent damage being done right now as we speak. So again, people are twice as likely to feel that way. Really scares me to think about these numbers. And for me, it shows that there's a direct correlation between our economic security and what's going on with our mental health. And so again, please type in here right now and tell me, in the last 2 to 4 weeks, have you experienced feeling of anxiety, hopelessness, any suicidal thoughts? If you can type in there and tell me. And if we go into our next slide, a business leader just wrote into me this morning on YouTube and said, look, I'm a business owner from Nottingham. If they enforce another lockdown, I honestly don't know what we will do. We work servicing the restaurant trades equipment, again, in the same type of business and retail, and we've barely made it through the past few months. Let's get some balance back to get out of this horrible nightmare situation. We need stability instead of the government changing their minds every 2 minutes. Scary times. And that's an important word, stability. And when I was at that coffee shop speaking with Peter Dorr-Smith, and again, we'll put out the full interview on YouTube so you can really listen to him. Great if you're an entrepreneur, but great if you're a citizen just to understand what they're going through. But that lack of certainty is what hurts businesses, but it also hurts people's mental health. And this is something that really concerns me. And it's something that no one's talking about. And the government doesn't seem to be prioritizing the economy in relation to our mental health. I see a lot of people making statements and making policy changes, but it doesn't seem to be focusing on the economy, which will have a direct correlation, as we've seen, with our mental health issues. Again, I look at the people of London as the infrastructure of London. It's a 91% service economy here in London, and maybe even in the city you live in, which means the people are only as healthy as their minds, and the people are the infrastructure of the city. So if we continue to let this go by days and weeks and months, we're going to see a deterioration of everything, our society, our economy, and everything. So it's really dangerous, and I just don't see the politicians talking about this. I don't see them offering solutions. When people talk about the economy, they says, oh, that's just rich people and greedy people. No, the economy is it's really the backbone of what goes on in society. London wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the economy. That's why people came together originally to trade. And I think we really need to focus on empowering these business leaders to move forward. And mental health is something that we've been talking about here on London Real for the past 9 years. I've had people like Eddie Hall, the world's strongest man, speak very honestly about his suicidal thoughts when he was a teenager. He literally almost took his life and yet went on to become the strongest man in the world. Really powerful, that story. I've had championship boxer Nigel Benn talk about his own struggle with mental health after his boxing career and speak really honestly about it. 6-time Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates has been in this studio talking about his depression that he suffered when he stopped being a bodybuilder. This is something that we're always talking about. We're always talking about mindset. Mindset is really crucial to make sure that you keep in the forefront of what's happening. And we've had people like the U.S. Navy SEAL David Goggins, Dr. Joe Dispenza, even people like the Wim Hof, the Iceman, using physical practices to keep their mental health. So again, it's really important to prioritize these things. And again, find some ways for us to get London back to work. And so just want to share with you a couple other slides here. I think it's really important that we support our local businesses. And this is me with my tailor, John Kent. And he's been a guest on London Real. He's actually one of the tailor for Dan Pena, the $50 billion man. He's the one that's got me looking like a Chicago gangster. And I've just gone to John recently and said, I want to buy some suits from you. I said, how's business? He said, Brian, it's hard right now. You know, he's in central London. He's struggling to keep the rent going and to keep business going. He's like, Brian, we need to get people back to work. We need people in the offices, in the city. We've got to encourage people and show them that there's a safe, science-based approach to deal with COVID and still get the economy going. And so I'm trying to support my local businesses and throw them business, because when we lose John Kent, we lose, I mean, he's a legend, you know? I mean, you lose all of that history of everything he does as a craftsman, as a small business person. You know, I can't go to Marks and Spencer and get that kind of quality. And so I'm going out of my way to try to support my local businesses, pay my personal trainers, dine out or order out. We need to spend money in this city and get the government to understand we've got to get London back to work. And so a few of the thoughts I have here on what we can do going forward. Because again, I always say to anybody here at London Real, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And that's why I don't want to be someone that just complains. You know, when I read the newspapers in this country, all they do is vilify our politicians and their policies. And while I do think they are not prioritized correctly right now, I want to offer solutions. So I want to ask you this question right now. And again, feel free to give me your comments. Why don't we try some of these things? Why don't we do what Peter is doing for his store here, Caffeine? Why don't we allow outdoor seating and the use of the streets throughout London for the rest of 2020? Right now, Peter is waiting for an answer from the Westminster Council whether he can continue his outdoor seating after September. And he said, they're going to tell me next week. He said, next week is not enough time for me to get my staff ready and get my supplies ready. And I'm asking the City of London to give the privilege to all retail businesses to move out into the streets, to put tables and chairs out there, to support the very lifeblood of our business here in London, and also the mental health of our entrepreneurs, our workers, and everyone here in the city. So I'm putting that out there. Again, let's cut the red tape and just approve it, to where these people don't have to, you know, come on London Real in order to get the approval. Let's allow them to do that. Let's trust their decision-making and give them that opportunity. And again, he's got seats out there. As you saw in the video, people are out there enjoying themselves. And he said they're going to continue sitting out there even when it gets a little colder. So that's one of my ideas. My second idea is this. Why don't we remove the congestion charge entirely for the rest of 2020? Unfortunately, the mayor of London put the congestion charge back and made it 24/7. And so speaking with some of these business leaders, they also said people now have to pay to come in at night and spend money in restaurants and pubs and nightclubs. People have to pay money to come in on the weekends to spend money in these retail establishments. It's absolutely ridiculous. This whole tax and spend concept of government, it's obviously leaders that have never been an entrepreneur. They've never been in business. And that's one thing I spoke with Peter about. Once you've been an entrepreneur, you know how important every day is, every pound, dollar, or euro is to keep that business going. You've got to reduce all of the resistance and blockages. So this is my suggestion. Remove the congestion charge, get business back up and running. Third thing, Why don't we reduce the business rates across the board for central London? And if you're not from this city, businesses get an extra tax for doing businesses in certain boroughs. We get taxed here at London Real as well. Drop those down to zero for the rest of 2020. It's going to stimulate business. It's going to stimulate the economy. It's all upside if we do this to allow these businesses to survive. And Peter complained yesterday about those business rates. They're literally choking him as an entrepreneur, and that's not what we want at all. Fourth suggestion I have for you is, why don't we stimulate the key sectors only with an extended furlough? And this is one of the bigger mistakes that we've seen out there. They've furloughed all workers in all businesses and subsidized their salaries, but now we're seeing certain businesses need more help. And these are really those small businesses that keep the streets of London and the central population alive. Retail, hospitality, nightclubs, pubs, these are the businesses, cafes, restaurants. We need to give them specific help to keep them alive, or we're going to see boarded up stores, which is going to lead to more unemployment and more of a recession. So that's my suggestion. And my final suggestion is one that might seem obvious, but it's just not obvious out there. Peter is struggling with this issue. We have a lack of science-based protocols for our retail establishments to deal with COVID responsibly and still stay in business. We've all seen it. I've got to wear a mask when I walk to my table in the restaurant, but then I can take my mask off and eat. Why? I can go to a pub, and if I stay away from people, it's okay. If I go into McDonald's, I can only go if there's a plexiglass piece that's, half a meter long. None of this stuff seems to be made on a science base. So we need to really find out, what is the science telling us when it comes to face masks, social distancing? How can we safely open these places and get people to understand that there needs to no longer be the fear? And that's the final part. The consumer themselves are still scared. And until they are allowed to go back to businesses, to sit outside, to go to a pub, to go to a restaurant, to go to a nightclub in an intelligent and responsible way, they're going to stay away. So we've got to really understand the science-based protocols, and I don't see that happening in our government at all. I saw the Eat Out, to work out program, and then I said, now we can't go out in groups of 6. It's all these conflicting messages about when you can go out and wear a mask, when you can go out with a group. It doesn't make sense. It creates fear, frustration, and uncertainty with everyone out there. And it's time to change these. And if we don't talk about it, no one's going to change it. And it's really frustrating, because the last numbers I want to share with you are numbers that just make me sad. I mean, small and medium-sized businesses are 98% of the economy here in London. And since lockdown, we've already lost 25,000 of these businesses. They're going to be gone forever at this point. And if we continue at this rate, we're going to lose another 1 in 5 of every single business that you see out there on the street right now. They're going to go bankrupt, and they're not coming back ever. These are people like John Kent, one of the greatest suit makers, makes suits for the royal family, is going to be out of business forever because we didn't respond to their needs and go out there and look after them, sometimes with a simple regulation that doesn't cost any money. Allow them to put tables on the streets just to keep their business afloat and alive. Allow them to use intelligent protocols so they can get the most number of customers in their stores safely. Allow them a break in business rates. Allow more people to come to the city. This is real. These are people I know. These are friends of mine that they're dying. Their businesses are dying. Their mental health is suffering, and so is that of their families, their friends, and of course, all of their employees. And so I think that's it for our slides. And again, look, my call to action to you is this. First of all, leave me some comments below and tell me, are you feeling stressed? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling suicidal thoughts? I'd love to know, are you feeling that way? There's a great group here, the Samaritans in London, who can also help you with that and deal with that. And they are alarmed by the rates that are going up. We've seen some new highs in suicides in various boroughs here in London, and it's alarming. And I just don't see the government doing it. I know they talk about mental health, but I don't see the action happening. And I personally believe there is a direct correlation between the economy and our mental health. If we don't solve these economic problems, we're going to see more and more problems coming down the road. Mental health, physical health. It's going to start trickling down into everything where it's actually going to cost real lives. And I don't want it to happen. And so again, this is the second video I've done in this series of how to make London great again. And the last 2 episodes, we've really talked about how to get London back to work. I think it's such an important thing. One of the stories that Peter told me was this. He said, Brian, we're in the hospitality business. We love being around people. We love serving. We hate standing around doing nothing. We hate sitting at home. It makes us sad. It makes us depressed. We love being connected. We love doing things for other people. We love being of service. And it's the same thing here at London Real. Every day we come in, we try to innovate, we try to provide information for you, we try to make your life better, we try to be of service. And that's what we all need to be as humans. So let's give us the chance to do that. Let's give people the tools. Let's give them the break in the business rates. Let's remove all the regulation and red tape. And let's really get out there and get London back to work. And let's also make London great again. So again, I really appreciate your help. I hope you enjoyed these videos. If you want to watch the full version of my interviews with Simon and Peter, they're going to be on our YouTube channel and on our Instagram and on our Facebook as well. So follow those. Some really incredible insights, whether you're a business owner, some ideas for you on how to stay in business, whether you're an employee, ideas on how you can support your business so you can keep your job, and also just to understand what these people are going through. And the final thing I'll say is this: support local businesses. Go out of your way and spend money with them. And try to spend money with these small and medium-sized businesses, because, you know, the big retail firms, the ones that are owned by venture capital, the ones that are on the stock market, they're going to be okay. But it's the culture of London that comes from our small businesses. It really does. If you think about it, it's the John Kents of the world, the Simon Woodruffs of the world, the Peter Dorr Smiths. They're the ones that give us what a city really means. They're the reason I love London. And so let's go out of our way and support them in these hard times. Again, let's find solutions. Let's ask our government to step up and recognize these things. And I'm going to be putting out ideas. Please leave your comments below. Again, London Real is a marketplace of ideas. We want to put the best stuff out there so they can rise to the top. We can openly debate them and then move forward on those ideas. That's why free speech is so important. That's why being able to speak in an unedited and unscripted way is so important, because again, the best ideas have always marked the upsurge of human civilization throughout time. And let's do those now. So there you go. Finally, if you want me to come visit you and talk to you about your business, or about your theater, or about your healthcare service, or about your fire department, or your police department, or anything, send me a message. Come to londonreal.tv, go to the About Us section, and say, hey, Brian, come see me. I want to talk about this, this, and this, because every week I'm going to be going out into the field here, and I'm going to have real conversations with real people. And look, hopefully someone will listen. You know, I really believe our people in government are going to listen, or they're going to be forced to really see these great ideas and make these changes and get us all back to work and make all of our cities great again. So there you go. It's Brian Rose on Real Deal, and I look forward to talking to you next week on the third part of our series of how to make our cities great again, how to make this world great again. And I appreciate all of your insight, and we'll see you next time. At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.